Ian Anderson here from Launch and Release, and I've been thinking about how I could help you continue down your crowdfunding path. So I want to share with you a little article I wrote a few years back that is still incredibly relevant to crowdfunding today. It absolutely covers the bases, shows you why it's so important to be prepared and to understand the 6-step launch process and follow it to the T. And P.S. if you haven't seen the 6-step launch process or don't know what I'm talking about, be sure to check it out by clicking the pink button that says Steal Our Launch Process at the top of this post. Let's dive in. This little presentation is called 25 Crowdfunding Mistakes That Can Make You Look Like a Money-Hungry Fool. Now before we begin, let me tell you that even though 25 is a lot of mistakes, you should just relax. Don't worry about taking notes or anything, just take it in. I'll get you the list at the end of the video. And also, as long as you follow the 6-step launch process, you'll really have taken care of many of these mistakes before you even get started, all right? So let's dive in. Asking for money sucks. Maybe you fear rejection, or maybe you worry that you'll look desperate or greedy, incompetent or rude. It's a lot like being a middle schooler trying to hold hands with your date for the first time. Awkward. Asking for money often raises internal doubts, and most people have legitimate questions when it comes to asking for money. Will I seem greedy? Will asking for money negatively affect my relationships? Will people trust me? Will they understand what I'm doing? Or will I end up looking like a total a-hole? When you're going to crowdfund, you can't afford to have these questions dogging you because self-doubt and fear will betray your efforts in some subtle and many not so subtle ways. It's crucial that you're well prepared to ask for money. If you're not, you run the risk of sabotaging yourself, and newsflash, that's not a great thing to do. But there are tons of resources to help you prepare to ask for something you want. Just Google how to get what you want. It shouldn't take you more than a page or two of results to get a good grasp. A few of my favorite internet articles on how to get what you want are The Art of Asking by Sarah Peck, How to Get Everything You Want by Dave Kerpen, and Amanda Palmer's TED Talk, The Art of Asking. These articles basically encourage you to 1, be grounded, centered, and certain in why you are asking, which means you understand your purpose. 2, be kind and make sure that saying yes to you is also in the other person's best interest. 3, practice asking so that you're confident and know what you want to say. 4, directly and clearly ask for what you want. And 5, say thank you. I would encourage you to read up on this topic to really internalize what I've just quickly summarized. It takes more than hearing it once to really put these best practices into action. But once you've done your homework, you'll be significantly more prepared than you were before. But that being said, there are many potential pitfalls when you're asking for money during your crowdfunding campaign. Make these mistakes, and you could end up looking like a money-hungry fool. So let's go through the list to help you solidify the how, who, what, when, and where of asking for backers. And be sure to do your homework ahead of time because these mistakes can actually bleed over into your video, campaign description, and project updates if you aren't careful. Crowdfunding mistakes come in several flavors. The absolute biggest crowdfunding mistakes are completely obvious when you point them out, but you'd be amazed at how many people make them. The first mistake is not asking. It's kind of crazy that we need to cover this, but we really do. People make the mistake of not asking. I've seen it, and people have even told me they've done this. You have to ask. Whether you're quoting Sarah Peck from her article, Nora Roberts, Tony Robbins, or anybody else with a pulse, they'll say, if you don't ask, the answer is always no. Obviously, you need to ask. But also, beware the stealthy cousins of not asking, such as the non-ask ask. This is usually due to fear or maybe forgetfulness. And it's where you talk about your campaign, your purpose, and your mission. You talk about what the funds will be used for and how the result will affect your life. You talk about how great it is to have supportive people in your life. And then you stop short, not asking the person or audience to become a backer. You have to ask. Don't forget this. Another infamous cousin of not asking is assuming you don't need to ask, which is functionally equivalent to the non-ask ask, but it's rooted in ego and pride instead of fear or uncertainty. It's particularly likely to happen with people you are close to and care the most about, because you feel like they should know what's going on with you and that they should just give their support automatically because of how close you are with them. But the truth is that even these people will need to be asked directly. While some people might volunteer support for your project, others who really care about you might be too busy, or they may not realize the importance of your campaign. Or maybe they're just not thinking clearly and they become a victim of the bystander effect, where they assume everybody else will do it so they don't have to. Don't hope for mind readers. ask. These mistakes are big ones because they can severely decrease the chance of a person saying yes to your request. They usually happen because you don't completely understand your purpose and passion, or because you try to copy all of the other disingenuous marketing drivel out there, which you're used to seeing in the media and from other artists who don't know what they're doing. Overcoming these mistakes is as simple as preparing yourself. You must truly know what you and your project are all about and what you're specifically asking for. It also requires that you care enough about the other person to only want their yes if it's also right for them. There's a Forbes business blog post called Get What You Want by Asking. It looks at the genetic makeup of a good ask, which is connection, vulnerability, timing, and honesty. Dave Kirpin, who I mentioned earlier, supports the notion of being authentic, transparent, and vulnerable. Once you start reading about asking, you'll see this stuff all over the place because that's what works. You can't bullshit your way to crowdfunding success. And this is mistake number 4, being phony or employing bullshit hype. Don't try to be all, I'm a superstar, you're an adoring fan. Don't browbeat people with meaningless superlatives like awesome, amazing, or best ever. This doesn't work because crowdfunding is much more personal than your typical internet-based product or marketplace. You must understand your purpose and passion and communicate it on a trusting person-to-person level. It's the same way you talk to your best friend. Mistake number 5 is being uncertain of your desire. Are you doing this because it seems like it might help you get somewhere? Or are you doing this because you have a fire burning behind your artistic vision that you must see through? As Sarah Peck says in her article, you need to know you want it. Want as in you need it with your very soul, not just it would be nice, okay? I've seen many failed Kickstarters where it's closer to the latter. Number 6 is being afraid to ask. Fear is a very powerful psychological factor in our actions and choices. And if you haven't dealt with your fear of asking in general, then you may end up betraying your own efforts. Because if you're fearful, chances are good that either you don't really think you need it or you don't really believe in what you're doing. If you get to the point where you have a deep understanding of your mission and purpose, and you're absolutely convinced you're asking for the right help, but you're still having fear and doubt, go find my blog post called Slam the Door on Your Fear of Asking for Money, and that should help you out. This brings us to mistake number 7. Lacking genuine concern for people in general, and specifically for the person you're talking to. Crowdfunding equals asking for help, period. There's nothing wrong with that. It's actually great because the people that do help are interested in the outcome of your project. They benefit from it in various ways, including both the end result and helping you get to where you're trying to go. But before you run off asking for help, spend a little time focusing on the ideas of gratitude towards and caring for those whom you'll approach. Why? Because people are more likely to give help when they know they're more likely to get help. Simon Sinek, known for his legendary TED Talk called It Starts With Why, describes how the Marines build their relationships and social fabric necessary for sending soldiers into battle who must be willing to kill or to be killed for their fellow soldiers. Pretty intense stuff. Now he points out that those who think they can do it on their own or who aren't team players, they slowly get ostracized during training, and that they aren't able to accomplish their individual goals until they help the team accomplish its goal. Now obviously, crowdfunding isn't life and death, but there are subtle ways to screw this up. Like when you put out the vibe that you'll achieve your goal because of how awesome you are, or how awesome your project is going to be, or how awesome the players, actors, designers, publishers, or promo people are going to be. On the flip side, don't pander. This isn't a contest to see who can gush on and on about how supportive your fans are and how you couldn't do it without them and how everybody is awesome and how much you love them and blah, blah, blah. Even though it's true. The way to show that you care is to be certain that pledging to your campaign is right for the person you're talking to. Don't expect them to back you. Don't coerce or force them into backing you. Don't guilt them into backing you. Show them the opportunity in front of them and let them make their decision. The 8th mistake is expecting people to jump on your bandwagon just because. One of the most annoying lines ever in a crowdfunding video is, and that's where you come in. This is complete bullshit. People don't come into the picture just because you need money. They come into the picture because you are developing your artistry, your vision, and your project in a way that will benefit both you and them. You should be thinking about people from the very beginning because without them, you might as well create your art and then dump it in the garbage. This isn't anything new to you, but just be mindful of what you say and how you say it, as it's counterproductive to simply assume people into backing you. Asking clumsily is mistake number 9, and this results from simple laziness. It's really not justifiable given all of the other work you'll be putting into your campaign. Practice until you're an expert and keep practicing. The first several times will be awkward. There's no way around it, so don't worry. You'll need practice to find a smooth flowing narrative that succinctly accounts for all of the necessary considerations. Heck, this is why professional salespeople go through extensive training and oftentimes work from a script, so they don't miss things or screw it up. Find a trusted friend who's willing to invest some time and practice going through what you're going to say with them. Mistake number 10 is playing the victim, which is where you're feeling self-pity and actually broadcasting it externally. You aren't likely to start your campaign in victim mode, where you feel sorry for yourself because raising money is so difficult. But if things become difficult, it can be tempting to place the blame on things outside of your control, including other people. I have seen many campaign creators who say things like, "Things haven't been easy," or "I left a great job for this." This might make the creator feel better, but it sure as heck isn't going to actually make things better. If you start leading with negative feelings about how things are going, you're not likely to get backers. People will be backing you because of purpose, mission, and vision. If you act like a victim, it ends up sounding like whining and an uninspired cash grab. Closely related is mistake number 11, focusing more on your need than on your mission. And this is another area which can subtly shift people's perception of your campaign to a cold grab for cash. Obviously, you have a need that you're addressing with your crowdfunding campaign, but you can't afford to focus on it because people don't give due to needs. The nonprofit world knows this all too well. Many organizations make the mistake of thinking that because their motives are worthy, people will respond to their need. But experience has shown this to be untrue again and again. A catchphrase at many successful organizations: money follows mission. It's a fact that you need to internalize before you start talking to people. Don't get me wrong, you can still talk about what you'll spend the money on. You just can't present your costs as a primary motivator because it won't motivate anyone. Number 12 is boring people with a laundry list of credentials. It's the sneaky stepbrother of bullshit hype, but instead of exaggerating or using an innocent little white lie, everything you say is actually true. It's just that it's either boring to hear or the listener doesn't really think it's important to their decision. Any profession that widely employs press releases or promotional blurbs does this from early on, especially musicians and writers. Think about the concert press release in your local What's Happening or the write-up for an author's upcoming meet and greet. But honestly, most people start tuning out before too long if you lead with this, especially when it comes to crowdfunding. Instead, they want to hear about mission purpose and what the project means to your life, because that's what drives 90% of crowdfunding contributions. Who you ask mistakes are probably the most common mistake that I see in campaigns and generally result from a misunderstanding of crowdfunding mechanics. Remember, 75% of crowdfunding campaigns are for under $10,000 and they typically have 100 to 200 backers. Where are these backers most likely to come from? Your pool of existing relationships or strangers who have never encountered you? I think you know the answer. It's not that you can't turn strangers into fans, but during a crowdfunding campaign, this is a little bit like a salesperson cold calling prospects out of the yellow pages. It's extremely difficult with a low conversion rate. Your strategy with the highest probability of success focuses on existing relationships. And without going into detail, the bottom line for dealing with these folks comes straight from Simon Sinek. People don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. The best way to communicate your why, which is your purpose and mission, is to think about talking to individuals instead of to one big crowd all at once. Ignoring individuals and focusing on the crowd is a huge mistake, killer even. There's no better way to establish a connection with someone than by being completely personal. So don't think of the crowd like it's a gym full of people who you're giving a speech to. Instead, and I can't believe I'm saying this, but take a cue from politicians. Talk to people on both an individual basis and all of them at once. If you only talk to all of them at once, your chances of making a personal connection fall dramatically. In The Psychology of Persuasion, which is one of the most widely read psychology books of all time, Dr. Robert Cialdini talks about the bystander effect and how the more people there are in a crowd, the less likely each individual is to act. You've probably heard stories of experiments on this, where researchers will set up a fake mugging in a place like Times Square just to see if anybody will help the victim, and amazingly enough, Nobody helps, even though there are hundreds or even 1,000 people around. Cialdini has a simple solution to this problem. When he needs help, he approaches an individual directly. For example, if he were in a crowd and fell down in cardiac arrest, he would make eye contact with a single individual, point to them, and say, "You get a doctor, please." And guess what? The chances of that person helping out go from nearly 0 to nearly 100%. The mechanics of crowdfunding work the same way. Maybe not from 0 to 100, but even a modest doubling of the probability of receiving help makes a huge, measurable difference. So do the work of talking to one person at a time. Yes, you should still deploy communication to your email list and through social media, but this is your secondary task. Your first objective is to reach out to individuals. It is literally the difference between a successful campaign and a failed one. Mistake number 14 is trying to go viral. Hey, going viral is the holy grail of any marketing effort because you get huge amounts of free exposure. So why wouldn't you? Well, simple. The probability of success is so low that it's a waste of your most precious resource, your time. Crowdfunding typically lasts for around a month. I recommend 17 to 24 days. This is a limited amount of time to contact all the individuals whom you need to. Remember the last point, right? You can't afford to be wasting your time screwing around trying to go viral. This results in lots of unfocused, non-productive effort. Oh, and two more things. First, even the biggest artistic campaigns like Amanda Palmer or Veronica Mars were primarily funded through relationships which were already in place when the campaign started. And second, remember all that stuff about how you ask? When you try to go viral, you inevitably confuse the issue and water down your purpose and mission. Given the low likelihood of success, the trade-off just isn't worth it. Asking for the wrong thing will adversely affect your efforts, no doubt. But luckily, simply knowing what you'll ask for ahead of time will take care of the possibility that you get off track and go wrong. It is not unusual for campaigns to ask for several things, such as help for the project, help for charity, and maybe even help for another idea the campaign creator has that is totally unrelated. This is mistake number 15, confusing the issue. If you Google how to get what you want and read a few results, you'll see plenty of advice to be clear and specific in what you ask for. Thus, you need to communicate your clear, specific need in a straightforward manner. There's an article on the net called 9 Ways to Ask For and Get What You Want that takes it a step further by pointing out that piling on extra reasons doesn't really help. Research done in 2012 by Dartmouth psychologist Daniel Filer and colleagues showed that alumni were more likely to give to their alma mater when given a single basis for the request. So find one reason to make your request and give that the biggest play possible in order to ensure that you'll get a positive response in return. I often see campaigns tack on a little charity donation, maybe 5 or 10%. Heck, Pledge Music makes charitable giving part of their platform, but I don't think it helps. If you do a great job of communicating your purpose, then a charitable donation might not hurt. But if you try to use your charitable intentions, honorable as they may be, as a reason to support your campaign, then your efforts are misplaced. Ask for help for your project clearly by starting with your purpose, finishing with your purpose, and with a ton of purpose in the middle. Asking for too much is a mistake that can happen in two ways. On an individual level, you need to have concern for the person you're talking to. If that person is broke for whatever reason, asking them for $100 or maybe even $25 is a real stretch that could come off as pompous. Some consideration and use of judgment here will go a long ways. On an overall level, it's not wise to ask for a $50,000 budget if you have no experience to your name or have not established enough of a fan base to justify this amount. The converse of asking for too much is asking for too little. You don't want to ask your super supportive, really rich buddy who hit it big importing tea from Canada to pledge $20 if he was really interested and thinking about pledging $500. Nonprofits understand the natural phenomena of 80-20, where 80% of the results come from 20% of the occurrences, so they're always on the lookout for big fish donors. You usually see nonprofit appeals lead with a very high dollar amount, followed by a couple of lower but still high dollar amounts. Think about one you've seen lately, something like, "Please consider pledging $2,000 to our very worthy cause," which is followed by some check boxes with the amounts of $2,000, then $1,000, then $500, and other where you fill in the blank. Most people will choose other and throw in $10 or $100, but every once in a while the person will just throw down a big old chunk of change. For people of greater means and interest, You must keep this option on the table for them by not removing it. It's fine if they remove it because it's right for them, but it isn't fine for you to remove it. The first type of when you ask mistakes are made when talking to individuals. These mistakes generally arise out of discomfort in asking. The easiest way to keep yourself from making these mistakes is to do all the preparation that we've discussed. Know your purpose. Have an authentic concern for the people you're talking to. 18 is thinking you should ask about other people first. And this mistake is something I'm guilty of all the time. Like when I'm looking for free babysitting or trying to get a free Budweiser. You think you should butter people up. But back to Simon Sinek, who explains how the simple ordering of your request can be the difference between a yes or a no. He gives this example of what might happen when emailing someone with a request. Hi person, haven't seen you in years, hope you're doing well. Congrats on all you've been doing, it's really amazing, we should grab coffee sometime. Hey, if you could do me a favor, I'm in an online contest where I can win a big prize and I'm wondering if you'd vote for me, blah, blah, blah. As Simon points out, reading that email would leave you dismissive or maybe even offended and hitting delete. But what happens when you get the same email with a change of order? Request first, pleasantries second. Hi person, hoping you could vote for me in an online contest where I can win a big prize for my work. Haven't seen you in years and hope you're doing well. Congrats on all you've been doing. It's really amazing. We should grab coffee sometime. Okay, this works better because the person knows what you want, and then the pleasantries don't seem like a thin veil of disguise. Instead, the person can be grateful for them as well as willing to consider your request. When you put the ask last, your pleasantries seem really disingenuous and could potentially offend the person you are communicating with, even though you have no intent of offending them in the first place. Be very careful with this one, in both spoken communication and in written. Because of our inherent discomfort with asking, it can sneak up and bite you any time. Giving up too early is a subtle mistake, but it can be a bugger. Let's say you're talking to somebody who's listening intently to your story, but they're maintaining a fairly neutral body language and posture, so you aren't sure where they're at. You ask them to become a backer of your campaign. They pause. Perhaps they're trying to find the words to express their admiration that you're taking such a bold risk, or perhaps they're trying to decide how much to donate. Or perhaps at precisely the moment you stop, they just had to swallow and take a breath before they could start talking. But you take this slight hesitation as a negative sign, and because it's so unpleasant to be denied, you pipe up, or you could just share it with your friends by email or like it on Facebook. Mistake made. This won't bite you all the time. Some people will have your back, but some people will decide that instead of being a backer themselves, maybe it would be better for them to share your crowdfunding campaign. But it's really not better. Check out this excerpt from a post about social media and the bystander effect. Brian Solis led a project for the UN in 2010 to help increase awareness of malaria in Africa and also generate $10 donations for bed nets. He found that initially, most people shared rather than donated, essentially accomplishing just one of the two goals. In his research to uncover why, he found that people believed that their act of sharing was worth much more than a $10 contribution. He found that they truly thought their digital influence and social capital equated to tens or even hundreds of individual donations from their connections. People believe their act of sharing is worth much more than their potential contribution, so they share away and think somebody else will take care of it. Their intention may be noble, but the crappy thing about their thinking is that it's not true. Think about it. If everybody just shared but didn't pledge, well, you'd have a lot of shares and no pledges. So the reality is that they're standing there waiting for somebody else to take care of it. It's very related to what Cialdini wrote about in The Psychology of Persuasion. Ask specific people to take specific actions. Mistake number 20 is not following up. Follow-up is a critical part of any sales process. It's so critical that companies spend tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars, or probably millions, training their staff and implementing follow-up procedures. Commonly held wisdom is that you need to ask people up to 7 times before they'll take the desired action. Get comfortable with the idea of asking people multiple times. If they say no, obviously you need to respect that and stop asking. But if you contact a person during the first 3 days of your campaign and don't see them take action, but they don't say no, then contact them the second week and the third week, and especially in the closing days. Heck, sometimes people will say yes but not take action until the last day because they got distracted and forgot. Ask again. There are also a few ways to mess up by having completely bad timing. These will all seem obvious, but I'm constantly surprised at how many people contact me asking for help in the middle of their campaign who are guilty of one of these mistakes. Usually these mistakes are made due to lack of planning or misplaced expectations, possibly due to discomfort with asking. Starting too late, many campaign creators are guilty of launching and then just waiting to see what happens. Perhaps they don't want to ask, Perhaps they think they don't need to ask. Perhaps they think they can make up for it later. They have 30 days, right? But he who hesitates is lost, or at least has lost a golden opportunity. There are two periods to capitalize on people's excitement and momentum. The beginning of the campaign is one of them. I highly advocate that campaigns plan to roll hot right out of the chute and then do the work to make it happen. I've seen campaigns hit a $10,000 to $15,000 goal in as little as 2 days. Get early support from your closest friends and family to generate momentum and social proof, and then capitalize on that by continuing to make your appeal for people to become backers. Don't wait until it's too late. You'll end up raising less overall. 22 is not asking when you have momentum, and this mistake doesn't seem as bad as the last one, but it has the potential to dramatically lower the amount you raise all the same. I mentioned seeing campaigns hit a $10,000 to $15,000 goal in as little as 2 days, but what happens after that can vary dramatically. Take a look at these two examples. The top Kickstarter campaign had a monster first day, an okay second day, and then began coasting. Maybe that was okay, so it's not a criticism, but I bet they could have kept the pedal down and further increased their funding if they'd wanted to. Compare that to the bottom Kickstarter. This is a guy I worked with named Jay Stolar. He had a big first day, bigger second day, even bigger third day. And importantly, check out what happened during the last couple of days of the campaign. Another ramp up. The end of your campaign is the second period when you can capitalize on people's excitement and momentum. That's the lesson. If you hit your goal but don't have a plan for the end of your campaign, you will be leaving money on the table. 23 is giving up too early. Don't worry about how much of your campaign has elapsed compared to what % of your goal you've hit, okay? They don't have to be proportionate. If you hit the 2/3 mark of your campaign but have only raised 20% of your goal, that doesn't mean you'll fail. Many people make the mistaken assumption that your funding progress should somehow match up with the amount of time that has passed in the campaign, but it's not true. I've seen campaigns make close to 25 or even up to 70% of their total funding in the last few days. Kickstarter stats show of the projects that have reached 20% of their funding goal, 81% were successfully funded. Of the projects that have reached 60% of their funding goal, 98% were successfully funded. You get to that point, what you need to worry about is being sure that you've contacted your friends, family, fans, mailing lists, and social media contacts as personally as possible, in person, by phone, personal email, in that order, especially for those who you have a tight relationship with. Also, remember that people are procrastinators in general and that you have to remind them several times to view your campaign and pledge before they take action, even if they meant to all along. Lesson, believe in yourself and be sure to do the work. Okay, we've covered 23 mistakes. I'm almost out of breath, but there are a few other mistakes that often sneak up on people. So why stop now? Mistake 24 is focusing too much on rewards. Whenever you ask somebody for something, it's nice to have something to offer them. It's called reciprocity, and it just feels better. Of course, your campaign needs good rewards, but keep in mind that the vast majority of backers will care more about why you're doing your project than about what you're giving them. In other words, people will back you because they believe in your purpose, not due to the rewards you offer. So when it comes to your video, your campaign description, and talking in person, you must give people the information they need, your why, your purpose. If you gloss over this to get to your rewards so you can demonstrate value to them, you'll be leaving out the most critical information that people need when deciding whether to back your campaign. Be sure to put your primary focus on why and continue to refer back to that throughout your story. Rewards are necessary and people do want them, but they very rarely convert backers on their own merits. This is the last mistake, and it's probably the saddest because the result of it can be hurtful to a relationship. When asking for money, you cannot focus on your desire for money in your pocket. Of course you know this, but that knowledge can recede during a campaign, so remember to have genuine concern for the person you're talking to. Care for them as much as you care for yourself, and you will feel genuinely compelled to communicate your appreciation and heartfelt gratitude. If you notice that you're forgetting or rushing through this step, then you're probably sabotaging your efforts by focusing too much on the outcome and not enough on the relationship. Take a little time to get grounded. Think about your relationship with the person you're talking to, and chances are that you're thankful for their presence in your life. And as a little side note, publicly thanking somebody on Facebook or Twitter is a pretty good way to make their support of you known publicly and have your project show up in their feed. It won't help you hit the jackpot, so to speak, but it will raise awareness, and you just never know how those things will turn out. This list gives you plenty to think about. It takes preparation and practice to nail it when you ask somebody to pledge to your crowdfunding campaign, But a lot of what we covered today can be addressed during the campaign creation phase while you work through the 6-step launch process. If you follow this roadmap, you'll eliminate many of these mistakes before you even start your campaign, and you won't have to worry nearly so much. So again, if you haven't seen the 6-step launch process, or if you don't know what I'm talking about, be certain to check it out by clicking the pink button that says Steal Our Launch Process at the top of this post. Take care, best of luck, and until next time.